Ryan Poles today, when asked, does Justin Fields have room to grow? He said he does. He has to get better as a passer. Asked if he's the starter next year, Poles said he'd have to be, quote unquote, blown away by a quarterback out of this year's class to take one. Yeah, no kidding. That's how everybody at the top of the draft usually, everyone acts like they're blown away. So Justin Fields getting moved.
If he gets traded, would that validate, would that be a win for Kyle?
It would.
But you don't trade. These aren't the guys
Kyle's even in position to win, air quotes, is because he hit on pick 262. Yeah. Mate, it appears, right?
I do this.
It really doesn't suck, right? He's a player somebody would want to work with. They just might have the chance of getting a better player because they have the number 1 pick in the draft.
I think a lot of people think he's one of the best running backs in the league right now. That's the way he's talked about. He can't, as Ryan Poles said, again, who watched more Fields than me, you, and everyone, including Bears fans, saw him at practice too, doesn't think he's a great passer. Can I rephrase the way he said that?
Does he have room to grow? He does. He has to get better as a passer.
So, yeah, I would say Mac Jones was horrendous this year. 14 touchdowns, 11 picks, and the eye test was even worse. Trey Lance, shattered ankle, needed another surgery where everyone's like, oh, it's got to come out anyway. Yeah, he was having irritation. So I would say I red flagged that one.
Yeah.
And he's back on crutches. And Fields now, it's going to be debated, and they are going to take calls. And I will not be stunned if he's traded because there are enough teams that would take him in a heartbeat. And it'd be actually an easy way to just start your clock as a GM. Take Bryce Young. What if you could flip him for a 1 and a 3 or something, right? And start with a rookie. What would Washington trade for Justin Fields just to give their organization some oomph? Risky by Poles because the likelihood that Bryce is better than Fields in the NFL, you would say, as we've seen. But that draft, and you and I were talking about before we hopped on, was a perfect storm. There was one guy leading the charge that was just like that year's Andrew Luck, that year's Zion, that year's Bryce Harper, that was just like, everyone agrees. It's going to be hard for him to fail. And the only thing that could make him fail was Urban Meyer kicking people, and everyone hated him. Now he gets a real coach. You're like, yeah, I see it. This guy's a pretty interesting player. I'd take him. The other guys kind of rode that hype.
Baltimore, 24.
You're saying
if they don't think they can sign Lamar, which of course they're going to sign Lamar, but
I don't know, man. I think there could be some craziness. We've seen the NFL has gotten a lot crazier in the offseason with people willing to do weird, crazy deals. Yeah, fuck. Everything's on the table. But that quarterback class right now looks pretty shitty. Trey Lance got Wally pipped. Zach Wilson, is going to get everyone fired and they hate him. Fields he is not good enough where you're entertaining the idea clearly. And for Ryan Poles to be like, well, I'd have to be really blown away. Well, has Ryan Poles been to Alabama this year? I would be shocked if he hasn't, right? Taking a trip there to evaluate those guys.
Will Anderson, looking at Will.
Yeah. So he's done his extensive research on both those two players.
Ryan Will's over here. Those are the quarterbacks you're looking at. And
Mac Jones is. Did you tell me that Bill was asked if Mac Jones was going to be their quarterback? And he said, "Yeah, that's the plan."
Bill's answer was like, "Yeah, he's good enough. Yeah, he's good enough to be in this league."
The hype on that draft, out of a 1 to 10, with the quarterbacks, would you say it was closer to a 10 than it was a 7?
Not only was it a 10. Most of the energy was spent on everybody but Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly.
Because Trevor, everyone knew was going number 1, but B, because Trevor did not have, it almost felt like the shine had kind of come off him a little bit. And everyone was debating Zach and Trey and Fields and Mac. And so the guy who was the best wasn't even the guy who was creating all the hype for that class, really.
Did the national championship game you went to, did they win it or did they get their ass kicked?
The national championship game I went to was his freshman year. They kicked Alabama's ass. That's when Tua got picked 6 on like their first possession.
Oh, gotcha. He lost in the playoff game to Fields where he got his ass kicked. And Fields threw, 6 touchdowns and throwing bombs to some of those guys that, look pretty sweet. They got some pretty good wide receivers in that program. But yeah, the hype It's a good lesson, right? And you just look around the NFL. Even Mahomes, like there was no hype on Patrick Mahomes coming out of college. There was, I would say, way more hype on Josh Allen, good and bad, but he was talked about way more than Patrick Mahomes in the draft. And then you just go to the Dak Prescotts, the Kirk Cousins, like those guys, Jimmy Garoppolo's, Derek Carr's. I mean, you're talking just second, third, fourth round picks are the majority of the starters. Say what you want about Tom Brady, he was a 6th round pick. Aaron Rodgers, once upon a time, went 24th. Like most of the guys crushing in the league are like, yeah, Baker Mayfield, people think he sucks. He went number 1. Jared Goff sucked, then he kind of resurrected his career. Wentz is the picture you sent me, he had to be the 3rd stringer for that game, right?
So I sent John a photo. I wish I had it on hand right now. It's so good. It was Sam Howell getting like a game ball, and behind him is Jake Fromm clapping. Heineke in uniform clapping. Big smile, like authentic, like really proud. Carson Wentz in the background clapping. So yeah, he would have been
no pads.
No pads. He would have been. Fromm was clearly like his pads aren't even there. Right.
Yeah.
But
so Heineke was the backup, and Howell started, and
Yeah.
Wentz was inactive. They treated Wentz like the Jets treated Zach Wilson in terms of like, you're not touching the field today. And that guy was the number 2 overall pick. So it's just, we know this. I mean, we could do this exercise in the 2000s and the 90s, but it is crazy how that consistently, it's going to happen this year, right? Bryce, CJ, Will Levis, I would guess, are all going to go in the top 10. Decent chance only one of them is really good. If 2 of them are really 10-year starters, that's an outlier situation. And more than likely some random dude. Now, just because you go in the 3rd round, like Desmond Ridder, probably going to suck. Like, most quarterbacks in general, regardless of the round.
Willis, was he a 3rd rounder too?
Who?
Malik Willis.
Yeah. You could argue, you know how they say like the likelihood of hitting on a pick in the 1st round is whatever. If you factor in the entire round, it's like 37%. Once you get to the 3rd round, it's like 18%. It diminishes. I bet if you did a study for 20 years, wherever you take the quarterback, the difference is, I guess the 6th and 7th would be pretty minuscule, but like the difference between a 1st round quarterback hitting and a 3rd round quarterback hitting over a period of time is probably not that much different.
Well, you know what's funny is you mentioned Goff. Like, if you told the team, here's the career Jared Goff's going to have, they would not draft him in the 1st round, right?
Definitely not number 1 overall.
Okay. Not number 1 overall. But
because like you said, you could do worse with Brock Purdy going at the end of the 1st round. I think you could take Jared Goff, pick 26, and like, is that a bad pick?
Yeah, okay. So, but so nobody in their right mind would take Jared Goff 1 or 2, knowing he was about to have this career. You wouldn't. It's not worth it, the value. But the odds that he's a bust are much higher than the odds that he even has this career, right? Like Goff's career is pretty rare, really. Most guys that get drafted at high don't feel like they turn into being as good as him. Like, he's got several years starting ahead of him.
One thing he benefits from, and we don't talk about this enough, I'd even factor in Sonny Dykes, Sean McVay, and now this guy Ben Johnson, who clearly people think pretty highly of. I mean, he's running these crazy plays. Like, he's pretty good. Pretty good offensive coaches for a large percentage of his playing career. Jared Goff. Yeah. Offensively.
Yeah, he's been in good spots. But, I mean, I give him credit,
I'm not diminishing. I'm just saying he should be glad that like he's been surrounded by clearly pretty high level coaches. Yeah.
He is reaching his potential. Did Baker? Maybe, but
they did call a pass to put the knife in the Packers' neck.
They did
on 4th down in that game.
They also called that